We'll just start in a minute. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to this evening episode of Pursue. And today we have Pursue 4D, which is gynae pathology. And we are streaming live from Kolkata. And today the topic is neoplastic and non-neoplastic lesions of ovary, in which we shall be handling the grossing, the basic histopathology, immunohistochemistry, and the latest updates. And to talk on this topic, which is a very complicated and difficult topic, we have Colonel Dr. Tanushree Mukherjee, who is an MBBS, MD, and DNB Path and MNMS. She's a professor in the Department of Pathology, Command Hospital, Kolkata, a senior advisor pathology, and she's been trained in oncopathology and an affiliate member of the Royal College of Pathologists, London. Before I ask ma'am to take over, let me request all of you to please keep your mic muted, your camera off, and please don't share your screen. With this, let me request ma'am, please share your screen and let's start. Thank you so much. Yeah, we can see your screen coming. Yeah, fine. Just please make it full screen.
Is it visible?
Please start. Yeah, perfectly fine, ma'am. Please start. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. As the topic is ovary, a very tiny organ, but believe me, very complicated. And because of the precision medicine and targeted therapy, the genetics and the molecular mechanism, as well as the simple basics like a follicular cyst, is equally important. So I thought it is a small topic, but it's quite an extensive topic. So I will be handling the non-neoplastic and neoplastic lesions. I will tell about the grossing, the immunohistochemistry, and the molecular, what is the markers, and the update. So the topic will be covered. The benign lesions will be like the congenital lesions, ectopic tissues, infections, then the surface proliferation, some syndromes like hair end syndrome, then some edema and fibromatosis of the ovary, the luteomas, then stromal metaplasias, decidual reaction. These I will not detail because this is disorders of ovarian failure, autoimmune oophorysis, then the vascular lesions, ovarian pregnancy, ovarian changes secondary to drugs and radiation, ovarian remnant syndrome, the mesothelial proliferation, the follicular cyst, corpus luteum cyst, ovarian hyperstimulation syndrome. A varied spectrum you see in the benign lesions. And then the malignancy, of course, that will be covered. So, the newborn ovary is a tan, elongated, flat structure that lies above the true pelvis. The ovary enlarges, increases in weight, and changes in shape throughout infancy and childhood. So, it is a solid organ composed of the surface epithelium and extension of the pelvic peritoneum, the cortex composed of cellular stroma, follicular units, corpora lutea and corpora albicans, medulla composed of large vessels that merge into the ovarian hilum, which is the point of attachment of the ovarian vessels. The blood supply is derived from anastomosis formed by the ovarian artery, a branch of the aorta, and ovarian branch of the uterine artery. The veins accompany the arteries. The congenital lesions and ectopic tissues, the ovary can be absent, associated with 46XY but rarely 46XX. Lobulated accessory or supernumerary ovaries. Then some conditions like endosalpingiosis, peritoneal inclusions, rete ovari. Here you can see the photomicrograph of a rete ovary. There is a microscopic focus of compressed glands lined by simple epithelium located in the ovarian hilum. Then the endosalpingosis, benign cortical glandular elements with tubal differentiation, including ciliated, non-ciliated, and peg cells, when cystic, denominated as Mullerian inclusion cyst. In the peritoneal inclusions, benign cortical elements, when cystic, denominated as peritoneal inclusion cyst. Then the ectopic tissues, some adrenal cortical rest, then it can have uterus-like ovarian mass or a splenic gonadal fusion, which is a rare anomaly, fusion of the enlarge of both organs, and nodule of splenic tissue is contiguous with the surface of the ovary organs, and some prostatic tissue can also be found. Then the infections of the ovary, it can be with the spectrum of a pelvic inflammatory disease of bacterial origin, which accounts for the most ovarian infection. It is always secondary to salpingitis and takes the form of a tubo-ovarian abscess. Polymicrobial infection in women characterized by inflammation, salpingitis, pelvic peritonitis, and leads to tubo-ovarian abscess. Most commonly due to gonorrhea, chlamydia, enteric bacteria, or purpural infection. So there can be adnexal tenderness, fever, and vaginal discharge. The rare bacterial infections and others are like actinomycosis, tuberculosis, malakoplakia, leprosy, and the parasitic infection and syphilis. With parasites, there can be ovarian schistosomiasis and enterococcus. And some viral infections like cytomegalovirus, then mumps orchitis, herpes virus, then fungal infections like disseminated. It is rare although, but then it can occur. Then granulomatous inflammation can be found necrotizing or non-necrotizing granulomatous inflammation. Primary ovarian tuberculosis and other primary ovarian granulomas are uncommon. Granulomas could be secondary to tuberculosis, actinomyces, ascaris, Crohn's, associated with a seminoma, dysgerminoma, because seminoma is in testes, dysgerminoma in the ovaries, enterobius, any foreign material, keratin, malakoplakia, sarcoidosis, schistosomiasis. The non-infectious disorders like keratin implants, gallstone implanted on the ovarian surface, and post-40 carbon pigment granuloma in the ovary. Surface inclusion, cyst, which are epithelial inclusions or the cortical inclusions. These are the invagination of the ovarian surface epithelium into the ovarian cortex. As I told you, this could be either a peritoneal inclusion cyst or a Mullerian inclusion cyst. So cyst, when it's lined by flat epithelium, is a peritoneal inclusion cyst. The IHC can be done with calretinine, WT1, D240, PAX8, and BERIP4 is negative. And Mullerian inclusion cysts, which are lined by ciliated tubal epithelium as a result of tubal epithelium in the ovarian parenchyma. Size is less than 1 centimeter. If it is more than 1 centimeter, by convention, the lesion is called as a cyst adenoma or cyst adenofibroma. When these teeth are incidental findings and they can have phenomena bodies also as seen in this photomicrograph, and there could be differential diagnosis, and so when required you have to resort to immunohistochemistry. Then some vascular changes and mesothelial proliferations can occur, so you should be able to recognize that, like vascular change with glands, so you have to not to confuse it with signature cells. Then the mesothelial proliferation on the ovarian surface and ovarian surface stromal proliferation. Then the follicular cyst, as we see commonly, common condition, benign ovarian cyst, if less than 3 centimeter termed the cystic follicle, more than 3 centimeter termed the follicular cyst. As you see, the etiology is, this is the normal follicular maturation. if there is no LH surge or no ovulation, follicle grows and becomes a cyst, which usually disappears within 2 to 3 menstrual cycles, but it may persist and it is called as a follicular cyst. Usually asymptomatic or forms an adnexal mass. Grossly, rarely greater than 8 centimeters, clear or serous fluid content, microscopically, outer layer of theca interna cells, usually luteinized and may be surrounded by reticulum. Variable inner layer of granulosa cells, luteinized after puberty. Some fact sheets like this, you can just remember here, cysts of follicular origin, physiological follicular cyst, or corpus luteum cyst measuring more than 3 centimeter. But corpus luteal cyst I will discuss separately, and grossly solitary fluid filled cyst, microscopically follicular cyst lined by granulosa cells with surrounding layer of theca cells. Both layers may show luteinization. Corpus luteum cysts comprise of thick undulating layer of granulosa and theca cells with prominent luteinization. I will show the photomicrograph. IHC, granulosa and theca cells are positive for inhibin, calcitonin and SF1. There is absence of FOXL2 mutations, but normally you can recognize, and so it will not be required for a molecular analysis in this. But as I am talking about the update, I should mention that. And the differential diagnosis: cystic granulosa cell tumor, surface epithelial cyst adenoma, uniocular cystic stroma ovari, spheroid cell tumor, or an endometriotic cyst. And this is the corpus luteal cyst. Please see the growth. Again, the same thing. Ovarian cyst more than 3 centimeters, lined by luteinized granulosa and theca cells. If it is less than 3 centimeters, called a cystic corpus luteum. They usually resolve, but if sometimes they may fail to regress following the release of an ovum and become cystically enlarged with fluid oblique blood. Resection is the treatment if symptomatic. The single unilocular cyst lining is convoluted, composed of luteinized granulosa cells, an outer layer of theca cells, prominent inner layer of fibrous tissue. Differential diagnosis is a cystic granulosa cell tumor, endometriotic cyst, follicular cyst, epithelial inclusion cyst. Then hyperreactio luteinalis is a condition, bilateral ovarian enlargement due to multiple luteinized follicular cysts. These may be associated with a human chorionic gonadotropin stimulation or hypersensitivity. Associated with herpetiform mole, choriocarcinoma, fetal hydrops. Usually no symptoms. Cysts typically involute within 6 months, operate only to remove infarcted tissue or to control hemorrhage. Microscopically, follicular cysts with luteinization of theca interna or granulosa cells, edema of theca layer and stroma. This is the fact sheet which is there: bilateral ovarian enlargement secondary to development of multiple luteinized cysts. Typically asymptomatic, discovered during pregnancy, grossly, moderately to markedly enlarged ovaries, multiple thin wall cysts, microscopically multiple thin wall follicular cysts lined by luteinized theca interna cells, marked edema in the stroma. IHC, as granulosa and theca cells are there, positive for inhibin and calcitonin. Then this is a condition, polycystic ovary. It is very commonly seen like girls coming with a polycystic ovary. Earlier it was called as a Steen-Levenson syndrome. Occurs during teenage and childbearing years, associated with endometrial hyperplasia, well-differentiated adenocarcinomas. There is acne, obesity, hirsutism, insulin resistance, and diabetes. There is 2 different diagnostic criteria. NIH said androgen excess, oligoovulation, exclusion of other entities that cause polycystic ovary. And in Rotterdam criteria, oligoovulation, excess androgen activity, polycystic ovary is present by ultrasound. Treatment: clomiphene citrate or follicle-stimulating hormone, weight loss. Grossly large ovaries, numerous subcortical cysts, microscopically multiple cystic follicles covered by a dense fibrous capsule, luteinization of the theca interna or hyperthecosis, few corpora luteum. This is the fact sheet with the ovary. This is a syndrome characterized by anovulation, menstrual dysfunction, hyperandrogenism, and large polycystic ovaries. Earlier it was called as Steen-Levithan. Etiology is varied. Affects up to 20% of reproductive age women. It causes infertility, anovulation, infertility, menstrual disturbances, obesity, hirsutism, acne, hair loss, grossly enlarged ovaries, multiple, often uniformly sized follicular cysts, thickened and white appearing superficial cortex. Microscopically collagenized superficial cortex, multiple uniformly sized and spaced follicular cysts present close to the ovarian surface, and there is Hydler cell hyperplasia. So differential diagnosis becomes a multiple follicular cyst, adrenal diseases like congenital adrenal hyperplasia because of the clinical features, and the autoimmune ovaritis. This is a syndrome. I thought I'll just mention this. It's an acronym, multisystem disorder that consists of hyperandrogenism, HA, insulin resistance, IR, and acanthosis nigricans. The precipitated abnormality is thought to be insulin resistance, the secondary increase in insulin levels, and subsequent overproduction of androgens in the ovary. And this is the pregnancy luteoma and large solitary luteinized follicular cyst. So gross and the microscopy of the luteinization is important, and IHC is inhibin and calcitonin. There is some stromal hyperplasias and hypothecosis, non-neoplastic conditions, and they are asymptomatic also, but it is seen in the ovaries, and it is important to recognize that to differentiate it from the Sexpot stromal tumor or the ovarian fibromas and stromal hyperthecosis. So, stromal hyperplasia has to be recognized in the microscope. Then, massive ovarian edema. Ovarian enlargement due to accumulation of watery extracellular fluid. It is almost always unilateral. It can cause torsion of the ovaries. Grossly enlarged ovary, microscopically striking stromal edema. Differential diagnosis is ovarian fibromatosis, fibroma with marked edema, sclerosing stromal tumor, and metastatic signet ring cell carcinoma, which is Frydenberg's tumor. This is a bilateral ovarian fibromatosis, convoluted external surface with patchy areas of white fibrous tissue, and the microscopy shows a fibrotic spindle cell proliferation which invades the follicular structure within the cortex. Then granulosa cell proliferations of pregnancy which mimic a granulosa cell tumor, but not to be confused with a granulosa cell tumor, and ovarian stromal metaplasia. So such varied things can occur in the ovary which are not tumors, which are not neoplastic. Idiopathic ovarian calcification. Then second photograph is of ovarian decidua. Then there's radiation changes and ovarian remnant syndrome. A corpus luteum cyst is surrounded by congested fibroadipose tissue. Then vasculitis of polyarteritis nodosa in a postmenopausal woman. Polyarteritis also involves the uterine cortex along with the ovaries. And this is ovarian pregnancy, hemorrhagic placental tissue protrudes from the ovarian surface. So with this, I just touched upon the non-neoplastic lesions and then the ovarian carcinomas. Ovarian carcinomas, an overview. Then the serous neoplasms, mucinous, endometrioid, clear cells. This is a surface epithelial tumors. Then the undifferentiated, transitional, mixed and other epithelial tumors. Then the germ cell tumors, sex cord stromal tumors. What are the advances in the medical management? Mesenchymal tumors and the grossing. This is the WHO classification. As you see here, the epithelial tumors, serous, mucinous, endometrioid, clear cell, Brenner's, seromucinous, and undifferentiated. The mesenchymal tumors, endometrioid stromal sarcoma, low grade and high grade. Mixed epithelial and mesenchymal, which are adenosarcoma and carcinosarcoma. Then the sex cord stromal tumors, which can be pure stromal or pure sex cord, and mixed sex cord stromal tumors. In the category of the epithelial tumors, the serous tumor could be benign, borderline, in which the terminology serous borderline is not preferred, and we prefer now the atypical proliferative serous tumor as proposed by WHO. And the serous borderline tumor micropapillary variant also has non-invasive low-grade serous. And in the malignant category, there is low-grade serous and high-grade serous. Mucinous, there is a mucinous cystadenoma, then mucinous adenofibroma, and in serous category also you see this along with the serous surface papilloma. Then the borderline mucinous tumor or atypical proliferative mucinous tumor and malignant mucinous carcinoma. In endometrioid also you see atypical proliferative endometrioid category is preferred over a borderline, and then an endometrioid carcinoma, and the benign entity remains the same, the endometriotic cyst or the endometrioid cystadenoma or endometrioid adenofibroma. Clear cell tumors again benign, borderline, malignant, then the Brenner's tumor, benign, borderline and malignant Brenner's, seromucinous tumors, and then the undifferentiated. And then you see the germ cell tumors, the common dysgerminomas, yolk sac, embryonal, non-gestational choriocarcinoma, mature teratoma, immature teratoma, mixed germ cell tumors. Monodermal teratomas like struma ovary, benign and struma ovary malignant, and the carcinoid, sebaceous tumors. Then germ cell and sex cord stromal mixed like gonadoblastoma, miscellaneous tumors, mesothelial tumors, soft tissue tumors, and tumor-like lesions I have already discussed along with the benign lesions, and lymphoid and myeloid tumors. We follow in ovaries the TNM and FIGO classification. For other organs except female genital tract, the TNM classification as per the AJCC, but now the FIGO is used for ovary, fallopian tube and primary peritoneal along with the TNM. So this is the stage grouping. So first I will be discussing the surface epithelial tumors, the overall overview. The surface epithelial tumors, most common 65 to 70%. Age group affected more than 20 years. The common are serous, mucinous, endometrioid. Here you can see the grouping and the origin. Like the epithelial tumors, the cells resembling the fallopian tube. As you can see, the tumors could be type 1 and type 2, as I will show you subsequently. So here you see there is a pentagon of tumors. Brenner, serous, endometrioid, mucinous, clear cell. Mucinous epithelium must consider GI source. Clear cell, large clear cell. Endometrioid resembles endometrioid gland. In serous, the cells resemble fallopian tube pathways. Low grade, the molecular mechanism is KRAS and BRAF mutations. High grade, P53 and genetically unstable. Please remember this by heart. Okay. low grade and high grade, the difference in the genetic pathway. And the germ cell tumors also, you see they're finding a pentagon, testaminoma, teratoma, embryonal yolk sac choriocarcinoma. Risk factors. For the epithelial tumors, BRCA1, BRCA2, Lynch2, hereditary non-polyposis colorectal carcinoma, breast ovarian cancer syndrome, lifestyle and reproductive. History of breast cancer increases the risk of epithelial ovarian cancer. The non-epithelial ovarian tumors associated with Creutzfeldt's, Gorlins, gonadal dysgenesis, Ollier-Marfocke syndrome with ovarian granulosa cell tumor, Dicer-1 syndrome with Sertoli-Leydig cell tumor. It is accepted now that low-grade serous carcinoma is not a precursor lesion for high-grade serous carcinoma. High-grade serous carcinoma usually arrives de novo, while low-grade serous carcinoma progresses from the atypically proliferating serous tumor, which was earlier called as borderline tumor. So as you see here, the epithelial ovarian cancers, it has been differentiated into type 1, type 2. In type 1, you take the low-grade serous, endometrioid, clear cell, mucinous, malignant Brenner, seromucinous. Genetic alterations, KRAS, BRAF, P10, PIK3CA, CTNNB1, iridia. Mostly arise from endometriosis, endometrioid clear cell, seromucinous carcinoma, or fallopian tubal-related serous borderline tumors. Type 2 includes high-grade serous carcinoma, undifferentiated carcinoma, carcinosarcoma. Mostly originates in the fallopian tube epithelium, characterized by mutations in TP53. TP53. So this is important. So here you see the entities as per the percentage wise: atypically proliferating serous, a low malignant potential, but what is important, I will tell you, the peritoneal dissemination and recurrence. So clinically and morphologically they can be borderline, but then you have to look for peritoneal dissemination. And there can be mixtures of the ovarian tumors. This is the IHC pattern in ovarian cancer: low-grade serous, high-grade serous, mucinous carcinoma, endometrioid carcinoma, clear cell carcinoma, and malignant Brenner / transitional cell carcinoma. So you see that CK7 is positive in low-grade serous and high-grade serous and mucinous and endometrioid and clear cell and malignant. So it is positive almost. CK20 is negative. It can come positive in mucinous or a malignant Brenner. ER, it is positive in mucinous and endometrioid. WT1 positive in low-grade serous and high-grade serous. P53 wild type usually found in all except for the high-grade serous, the type 2 tumor, you get a mutated P53. Napsin is positive in clear cell carcinoma and GATA3 or uroplakin or P63 in malignant Brenner or a TCC. And one marker is PAX8, which is a new marker, and it is found in the surface epithelial tumors like low-grade serous, high-grade serous, mucinous 50 to 60%, endometrioid, and clear cell. So I will discuss the precision medicine or the targeted therapy here only because you see the molecular markers, and so the checkpoints or the targets has to be affected and treated by the respective drugs. So PARP inhibitors for ovarian cancer, the poly-ADP ribose polymerase enzyme, which plays a role in DNA repair. So PARP inhibitors like olaparib, niraparib, rucaparib, they are used in BRCA mutations. Then avastatin, like bevacizumab, is a precision cancer medicine that targets a protein known as vascular endothelial growth factor. Then checkpoint inhibitors, which are various drugs like pembrolizumab and nivolumab, PD-L1 and PD-L2 receptor targeting. And other novel precision cancer medicines are also in development for advanced ovarian cancer. So this is summarized of ovarian epithelial carcinomas in a table, and then I will take the respective ones. And there is a protocol for sectioning and extensively examining the fimbriated end, because as you know, the origin is from the fimbriated end of the fallopian tube. So amputation and longitudinal sectioning of the infundibulum and fimbrial segment to allow maximal exposure of the tubal plica. The isthmus and ampulla are cut transversely at 2 to 3 millimeter intervals. So this is important, and I will reinforce again during the grossing. Serous tumor, an overview: 5% of all ovarian tumors, 60% are benign, 30% malignant. If prominent fibrous component is there with a cyst, it is adenofibroma or adenocarcinofibroma. So the tall columnar serrated epithelial cells resembling fallopian tube filled with clear serous fluid. Then hepatoma bodies. Then positive stains, as I have told already, CK7 is positive, WT1 is positive, ER, PR can come positive, negative for CK20, CEA and CDX2. So see a comparison, the serous cyst adenoma and adenofibroma. With the lining, epithelium resembles the fallopian tube, cuboidal to columnar cells, can be cystic, can have a fibrous component. Then you compare that with a borderline tumor. I told you already, we call it a atypically proliferating. There is a hierarchical branching, epithelial tufting. The molecular mechanisms are KRAS and BRAF, express ER, PR, PAX8, WT1. P53 is wild here, it is not mutated. Implants can be present. Then the atypical proliferative serous tumor, low malignant potential, broad branching papillae, hierarchical branching, focally covered by stratified epithelium, mild to moderate atypia with few mitosis. Occurs in middle-aged women. Poor prognostic factors are invasive implants rather than histology. Grossly partially cystic with watery or cyst-filled intracystic or surface soft white to tan cauliflower-like papillary projections. Microscopically, as I told, filled with papillae, but there is no stromal invasion. And it could have a medusa head-like appearance, lymph node involvement present in up to 20%. And the implants could be autoimplants or peritoneal implants, which are invasive and non-invasive. Invasive with infiltrating margin and desmoplastic stroma that resembles low-grade serous carcinoma. And non-invasive desmoplastic implants are just plastered onto serosal, omental and peritoneal surface. Defined as invasive if cytological atypia, destructive stromal invasion, stromal reaction, capsular invasion. Invasive nests have loss of calretinin plus mesothelial cells and loss of stromal CD34. So this is the molecular characteristic, and BRAF, KRAS and PIK3CA mutations. Differential diagnosis could be a benign serous papillary cyst adenoma, serous carcinoma, mucinous borderline tumors, or ovarian clear cell carcinoma. Then this is the entity which is still more than that in the borderline category only, non-invasive, low-grade serous, non-hierarchical branching architecture featuring micropapillary or cribriform patterns composed of rounded cells with scant cytoplasm and moderate nuclear atypia. The survival here depends on stage and the invasiveness of the implant. So as you see here, the implants are important in both. A diagnosis of non-invasive low-grade serous carcinoma requires at least one confluent area of micropapillary measuring 5 millimeter in one dimension and nuclear atypia greater than that allowed in a serous borderline or a atypical proliferating serous tumor. The tumors with lesser micropapillary and atypia can be classified as atypically proliferating serous tumor with focal micropapillary features. So please understand this. Lesser micropapillary area and atypia, you have to take it to the previous category. Then the low-grade serous. Now we come to the malignant category. Invasive carcinoma. Distinctive pattern showing low-grade malignant atypia. Often bilateral, exhibit fine papillary growth, necrosis is rare, calcification may be present, variety of architectural patterns, single cells, micropapillary invading the stroma. It can have associated atypical proliferating serous tumor component also. IST profile is similar to that. You can have WT1 expression, CK7 expression, PAX8 positive, Ki67 is low, KRAS and BRAF mutation. Prognosis of tumors confined to the ovary is excellent with surgical therapy. So here you see the categories: cystadenoma, atypically proliferating, micropapillary serous, non-invasive, micropapillary serous invasive and serous carcinoma. So stromal invasion, you see it is seen in the last two categories. Atypia may be present in the last four categories except for the benign one. And stratification and detachment usually present in micropapillary, atypical proliferating and invasive as well as serous carcinoma. So this is the development. You see here how the development is occurring from a ovarian surface epithelium. So the micropapillary variant, just to summarize that, non-invasive, and then the low-grade serous, which is a invasive. Here, it's single cells infiltrating and micropapillae surrounded by cleft-like spaces. Some bodies are present. Uniform population of cells with atypia but low mitotic activity. So low-grade serous. Prognosis depends upon the age. Does not respond as well as to platinum-based therapy as there is a less proliferation compared to high grade. Microinvasion is less than 5 millimeters. Then the high grade serous, epithelial carcinoma of serous lineage, papillary, glandular and solid growth patterns and high grade cytological atypia. There is something called as solid pseudoendometrioid transitional cell carcinoma like SET, more common BRCA1 mutation. Three patterns of aberrant p53 expression correlate with TP53 mutation. Most important factor is staging. Grossly bilateral, variable size, large, exophytic, solid areas tan to white with necrosis and hemorrhage, serous or blood-filled cyst. Fallopian tube can be grossly involved in the fimbriated end. Microscopically, solid masses with fusion of papillae. SET is having solid pseudoendometrioid transitional cell carcinoma, more common in BRCA1. This is a specific histology. Hierarchical papillary branching, glandular and cribriform patterns, significant nucleoplasm, atypia, prominent nucleoli, high mitotic index, necrosis. Sperma bodies are present. After chemotherapy also you have to see the changes, the fibrosis, the histocytic reaction, the clear cell change, decrease in mitosis. The positive stains, immunohistochemistry, you see P53, PAX8, WT1, CK7 is positive, is negative for CK20 and napsin A. Differential diagnosis could be a low-grade serous, clear cell carcinoma or undifferentiated carcinoma. This is a high-grade serous carcinoma with papillary structure, and the C microphotograph is a low-grade serous carcinoma. You can make the nuclear characteristic. And D is an endometrioid adenocarcinoma. So when you compare this picture, you'll be able to diagnose the epithelial tumor correctly. So this is a set solid pseudoendometrioid transitional cell associated with which genetic mutation? BRCA1. And most important prognostic factor for overall survival of ovarian high-grade serous carcinoma is stage. So this is just a recapitulation of the high-grade serous carcinoma versus the low-grade serous carcinoma. High-grade pleomorphic nuclei, chromatin is irregular, mitosis is more than 12 per high-power field, P53 is mutated, P16 is block positive, mutations in P53 and BRCA. Precursor lesions are serous tubal intraepithelial carcinomas and response to chemotherapy is good. Then the mucinous cut. It's the second category in the surface epithelial tumors. The mucinous most contain mucin, can resemble endocervical, gastric or intestinal type of epithelium. After serous, it is the second most frequent epithelial tumor. It may be associated with teratomas also, and there is a doubt always of an appendiceal tumor, but then you have to differentiate because it is the ovarian. Features favoring appendiceal or a non-ovarian origin will be ovarian surface involvement only, signet ring differentiation, normal only slightly enlarged ovaries. So this is also the category for, and pseudomyxoma peritoneae is almost always associated with a low-grade appendiceal primary. Grossly, they have more cells, multiloculations, large size, smooth outer surface, filled with sticky, gelatinous fluid rich in glycoprotein. Positive stain, CEA, CK7 positive, CK20 may be positive. If it is similar to upper GI or endocervical, then CDX2 can be positive. So this used to be from the benign category, and the borderline tumor, benign mucinous cyst adenoma and adenofibroma. See the lightening here, a single layer of mucinous epithelium, either resembling gastric type, foveolar or intestinal with goblet cells. There is no epithelial tufting or broad papillae. There is frequent KRAS mutations. And in the borderline category or atypically proliferating, if there is a high-grade pathologic atypia, it is called as the intraepithelial carcinoma. If it ruptures and leaks mucin into the stroma, it causes pseudomyxoma ovariis. Again, there is a KRAS mutation. Prognosis is generally very good. So, mucinous borderline spectrum with varied histomorphology, and the mucinous carcinoma. 77% of ovarian mucinous carcinoma are metastasis. 23% are ovarian primaries. So, favoring a ovarian carcinoma are unilateral expansile pattern of invasion, complex papillary pattern, size more than 10 cm, smooth external surface, microcystic glands, necrotic luminal debris, mural nodules, accompanying teratoma, adenofibroma, endometriosis or Brenner tumor. Stromal invasion more than 10 mm. Prognostic factor, infiltrative invasion. Grossly, primary tumors are usually unilateral, more than 10 cm. Microscopically, stromal invasion in an infiltrative pattern of growth. It can resemble a colorectal carcinoma with a glandular architecture. Then glands are almost always intestinal type. Endocervical type usually has other epithelial components like serous, endometrioid or squamous. Grading is not standardized, but it is done like with solid areas and cystic areas. Positive stain CEA, CK7, CK20, KRAS mutations. Differential diagnosis, endometrioid carcinoma or a metastatic tumor. So this is the primary ovarian versus a metastatic mucinous tumor. How to differentiate? Primary ovarian, unilateral, metastatic, bilateral. Size is large, metastatic size is smaller. Multicystic plus solid component with small capsule in a primary ovarian. Metastatic, it is nodular. It is within the stroma in primary ovarian. Metastatic within surface and stroma. Microscopically, well differentiated mucinous epithelium forming organized cyst or confluent glands. Metastatic which have infiltrative mucinous glands. Extra ovarian disease usually present in metastatic mucinous tumor. KRAS mutations are frequent here. So, when you resort to immunohistochemistry, because you have to differentiate from colorectum and appendix, small intestine, stomach, and pancreatobiliary metastasis. So, CK7 will be positive in primary ovarian mucinous and the pancreaticobiliary. So, then you will do a DPC4. There will be loss of expression in pancreaticobiliary and primary ovarian mucinous, there will be retained expression, and in others also. And CDX2, it is positive in the GI. SAT-B2, positive in colorectum and appendix. So this is SAT-B2 and DPC4, new IHCs are there. Then there is an entity, the seromucinous epithelium with both serous and mucinous appearance. Seromucinous cyst adenoma, adenofibroma, benign, very rare. Then seromucinous borderline tumor. Difference from serous borderline is strong association with endometriosis, malignant potential is lower, resembles endometrioid tumor with mucinous metaplasia. Prognosis generally good. Then seromucinous carcinoma containing predominantly serous and endocervical type of mucinous epithelium. The seromucinous borderline tumor. Then entity pseudomyxoma peritonei. It is important to differentiate here because of the mucinous spectrum. So, abundant gelatinous pelvic or abdominal mucin or mucinous ascites accompanied by peritoneal lesions with bland to low grade adenomatous mucinous epithelium, intimately associated with pools of extracellular mucin and fibrosis. It is not a pathological diagnosis. Include whether mucin contains benign, borderline or malignant epithelium, or whether mucin bisects into tissues forming a fibrous reaction. So benign or borderline epithelium should be diagnosed pathologically as disseminated peritoneal adenomycinosis. Malignant epithelium should be called disseminated peritoneal carcinomatosis. The tumor is excised plus chemotherapy is required. Then the endometrioid tumors, again the same spectrum is there. The endometrioid adenofibroma, the benign, then the borderline category, and the endometrioid adenocarcinoma. Endometrioid carcinoma I will discuss. They exist with endometriosis. They have synchronous endometrial hyperplasia or carcinoma, grading similar to primary carcinomas in the endometrium based upon the solid component. Prognostic factors, better than serous or mucinous tumors. Grossly cystic, solid, hemorrhagic papillary formations are absent or inconspicuous, 5% bilateral. Microscopically, non-cystic, viloglandular pattern, glandular confluence or stromal disappearance. Stromal invasion is defined as confluent glandular growth. It resembles endometrioid adenocarcinoma of the endometrium, well differentiated type. 50% is squamous metaplasia, modules or keratin pulse. Formerly it was called as adenoacanthoma. May contain luminal but not cytoplasmic mucin. Positive stains, keratin, CEA, human placental laxatin, and cadaverine. P10 mutations in 21% of cases. Differential diagnosis, granulosa or sertoli Leydig cell tumor, metastatic colonic carcinoma, metastatic endometrial carcinoma, and yolk sac tumor. So the spectrum is an endometriotic cyst or an endometrioma or a chocolate cyst. When you found the endometrial glands or the stroma, then the endometrioid cystadenoma and adenofibroma, endometrioid borderline tumor associated with endometriosis, and endometrioid carcinoma with back-to-back glands with confluent or cribriform growth, complex viloglandular papillary or labyrinthine glands. Molecular beta-catenin WNT pathway dysregulation, PTEN inactivation, IHC usually ER/PR positive, WT1 is negative. P53 can be positive in high-grade endometrioid. Prognosis is good if low stage, bad if high stage. Then the clear cell morphology in the surface epithelial tumor. Malignant tumor of clear hobnail and eosinophilic cells and tubulocystic papillary and solid configuration. Associated with endometriosis, Lynch syndrome. Again, stage is the single most important prognostic factor. Positive stains, keratin, LUM1, hyaline globules are seen with the fast positive, diastase resistant. Napsin A can be positive. Most common mutations are Iridia, PIK3CA and PTN. When associated with Lynch syndrome, most common germline mutation seen in clear cell carcinoma is MSH2 mutation, which is also seen in the colon cancer, the microsatellite instability. Histology, tubulocystic, papillary and solid patterns. Papillae are small, regular. Tubules and cysts contain dense eosinophilic targetoid secretions. Tumor cells, clear to eosinophilic cytoplasm, may have hobnail morphology. Eosinophilic hyaline bodies can be seen. This is the spectrum. Clear cells, no normal counterpart. Clear cell cyst adenoma, adenofibroma, then clear cell borderline, and clear cell carcinoma. Differential diagnosis, yolk sac tumor, dysgerminoma, serous carcinoma, and endometrioid. And you have to resort to IHC. For yolk sac, because it can have varied patterns, it is positive for glypican C, alpha fetoprotein, SAL4, negative for CK7, which is a surface epithelial marker. Dysgerminoma, positive of 3,4, SAL4, again CK7 negative. Serous carcinoma, WT1 positive, often ER, diffuse or null P53. This is a clear cell adenofibroma and clear cell carcinoma. Then the entity is a Brenner's tumor, usually less than 2 cm, rarely or more than 10 cm in dimension, fewer than 10% are bilateral, solid, firm, rubbery consistency, circumscribed. Sections are grey white or yellowish, calcification can be seen. 1/4 they use associated with other tumor types, mucinous most commonly. This is the Brenner's spectrum. The Brenner tumor benign, then borderline, and the malignant. Malignant Brenner tumor, papillary areas resemble invasive high-grade papillary urothelial carcinoma. Stromal invasion, irregular nest, confluent growth, marked cytological atypia. So now we come to the sex cord stromal tumor, which could be the granulosa theca cell tumor, that includes granulosa cell tumor, thecoma fibroma group, then Sertoli Leydig cell tumor, androblastomas, which could be well differentiated, intermediate, poorly differentiated, with heterologous elements, retiform and mixed. Then androblastoma, sex cord stromal tumor with annular tubules, steroid cell or lipid cell tumors, which includes stromal luteoma, Leydig cell tumor, Leydig hilus and stromal, and steroid cell tumors, NOS and unclassified. So the pure stromal, the pure sex cord and the mixed sex cord stromal tumor. The pure stromal are the fibroma, cellular fibroma, thecoma, luteinized thecoma with sclerosing peritonitis, fibrosarcoma, sclerosing stromal, signet ring stromal, microcystic stromal, Leydig cell, steroid cell tumor malignant. Pure sex cord tumor, adult and juvenile granulosa, Sertoli cell, and sex cord tumor with annular tubules. Mixed sex cord stromal tumor, Sertoli Leydig cell, well, moderate, and poorly differentiated, which can have heterologous elements, retiform with heterologous elements, and sex cord stromal tumors not otherwise specified. So this is the morphological approach. Seeing this table, you can easily make a DD what you want to diagnose, like spindly cells, fibroma, cellular fibroma. Mitotically active fibroma is mitosis is more than 4 per 10 high power feet. Fibrosarcoma. Then thecoma, fibrothecoma. Then a granulosa cell tumor with lumens, microfollicular variant, then juvenile granulosa, follicles plus secretion, Sertoli cell tumor, then Sertoli Leydig, based upon the atypia, mitosis, and heterologous elements poorly differentiated. Then adult granulosa cell, blue cells, clear or pink cells, Reinke crystals, Leydig cell tumor, Milan A positive spheroid cell tumor, Sertoli cell tumor, CD99 positive, S100 positive. Then the rare tumors associated with the Carney's complex, with the Peutz-Jeghers syndrome. Wolffian tumor, sex cord tumor with annular tubules, sclerosing stromal tumor with clear cells, edema, and sclerosis. This is a complete chart, very useful. This is a Sertoli cell component, Leydig component, juvenile granulosa, and an adult granulosa cell tumor. In a Sertoli Leydig cell tumor, you see the Sertoli cell component and a Leydig cell component. Ovarian fibroma, ovarian fibrosarcoma, then theca, thecoma, and Dutenite thecoma. This is a juvenile granulosa tumor. Tumor has many follicles that vary in size and shape and filled with basophilic secretion. Adult granulosa cell tumor, you see here a collagenous background, and these are the delicate cords of tumor cells. Then Sertoli cell tumor, hollow tubules lined by cuboidal to columnar cells. The histomorphology is very important. That's why I show lots of photographs, because it makes a visual impression also. Then the fibromas, microcystic stromal tumor, this is the growth of ovarian thecoma, spheroid cell tumor, sex cord tumor with annular tubules. So IHC is not helpful in distinguishing various types of sex cord stromal tumor, because see here the calretinine, inhibin, it's almost positive in all the things. A new marker is there, steroidogenic factor 1, highly specific, it is negative in germ cell tumor. CD99 can also be used, but it's not reliable. EMA, Paxate, Sulfur, they're all negative. So, immunohistochemistry in sex cord stromal tumor is not very useful. So, this is just summarizing fibroma, thecoma. Fibroma is less collagen, then fibrothecoma, and then thecoma. More cells, more cytoplasm. Sclerosing stromal tumor, again a benign tumor, pseudo-lobular architecture, arranged in cellular nodules in a hypocellular edematous to collagenous background. Staghorn vessels are present. Then sex cord tumor with annular tubules, aggregates or simple or complex annular tubules. Cells are columnar with clear cytoplasm. Two settings, sporadic or with Peutz-Jeghers syndrome. And the granulosa cell tumor, adult and juvenile. Adult will have cells with grooved nuclei. This is a favorite question. Then varied architectures, sheet-like, trabecular, ribbon-like, microfollicular with call external bodies filled with pink secretions. Majority have FOXL2 point mutations. Juvenile granulosa, they have no grooves. Macrofollicular structure with basophilic secretions. Prognosis is good. The Leydig cell tumor, secrete androgens. There is masculinization, hirsutism, amenorrhea, cells with abundant thick granular cytoplasm. Sertoli cell tumor, Varied architecture, tubular, trabecular, diffuse, alveolar, pseudopapillary. Cells with eosinophilic to pale cytoplasm and round nuclei with visible nucleoli. Sertoli Leydig cell tumor. Dicer 1 mutations. And I have told already there can be different varied architecture. Spheroid cell tumor and then metastatic tumor. Then germ cell tumor, diagnosis is usually made preoperatively, elevated serum tumor markers. The common are dysgerminomas, immature teratoma, endodermal sinus tumor, embryonal carcinoma, and choriocarcinoma. Choriocarcinoma, alpha fetoprotein is normal, LDH is normal, but beta HCG is elevated. So, germ cell tumor, dysgerminoma, large, solid, fleshy. The cells are large, polygonal, with clear to eosinophilic cytoplasm, distinct cell membranes. There is lymphocytic infiltrate in the fibrous septa. Good prognosis. Molecular, they have isochrome 12p, c-KIT mutations. Then embryonal carcinoma, primitive cells, large, vesicular nuclei with prominent nucleoli. Aggressive, but responds to chemotherapy. Then choriocarcinoma, in ovary, usually it is non-gestational, malignant cytoblast, mononuclear, and syncytial trophoblast, multinucleated. Abundant hemorrhage. Elevated serum beta HCG. Then the yolk sac tumors, also called as the endodermal sinus tumors. The patterns could be reticular, microcystic, also solid. The classical Schiller-Dover bodies with hyaline globules are present. Then teratoma, you know it can have various components, mature, immature. The grading is done as per the presence of the immature neuroepithelium. The rare foci of immature neuroepithelium 1, 2 and 3. Third is more than 3 foci per 4 field on any slide. This is the IHC of germ cell tumor. SALV4 is used nowadays along with OX34, D240 and c-KIT, the CD117, positive in the dysgerminomas. This is a mixed germ cell sex called stromal tumor. This is a teratoma with various components. So, although germ cell tumors of ovary are morphologically similar to testicular germ cell tumor, they may not necessarily have an identical origin. Testicular germ cell tumors originate from primitive germ cells with a malignant character, whereas ovarian germ cell tumors have a parthenogenetic origin from post-meiotic or meiotic cells. For this reason, embryonal carcinoma occurs more frequently in the testes than the ovary. Also, all teratomas in testes are considered malignant, unlike in ovary where there is mature or immature teratoma. All the germ cell tumors, dysgerminomas, then few mesenchymal tumors like low-grade endometrioid stromal sarcoma, a mesenchymal tumor identical to low-grade uterine endometrial stromal sarcoma, and differential diagnosis include a Mullerian adenosarcoma and malignant mixed Mullerian tumor. This has got a good prognosis and hysterectomy with bilateral salpingo-oophorectomy is the primary treatment of choice. IHC can be done and genetic features of JAS-F1, SUZ12 gene fusion and PHF1 gene rearrangement. And the high-grade endometrial stromal sarcoma with evidence of endometrial stromal differentiation, high-grade cytologic atypia with brisk mitotic activity. The prognosis is poor in this. Then there can be a mixed epithelial mesenchymal tumor, adenosarcoma, biphasic tumor with malignant mesenchymal and benign to atypical epithelial components. The stroma is low-grade but can be high-grade malignant with high mitotic activity. The stromal cells often lose expression of CD10, ER and PR. Then carcinosarcoma, biphasic neoplasm composed of high-grade malignant epithelial and mesenchymal elements, and it can have heterologous elements like of a rhabdomyosarcoma or a chondrosarcoma. These tumors are large with cystic degeneration, extensive hemorrhage and necrosis. The grossing of ovarian tumors, gross C, you have to measure that. Capsule, you have to see because the rupture of the capsule or the breach in the capsule, you have to mention because the staging will depend upon that. Because see here, the capsule ruptured, it becomes T1C. The peritoneal cytology is important, and the post chemotherapy you have to mention the necrosis and the changes, and the sections are very important. The parametrium you have to take, and along with that, the omentum and the implants, because the type of the ovarian tumor will be decided on the basis of that, because stage is the single most important factor in the prognosis. So, some pitfalls like what constitutes ovarian surface involvement. Tumor cells directly exposed to peritoneal cavity as exophytic surface papillae. The slight leakage Warren substage C. Yes. Rupture of a benign component of a heterogeneous tumor Warren substage C. No, data is not available. So this abdominal wall involvement indicates stage 3 or 4. Invasion to the anterior rectus sheath or into subcutis or skin warrants stage 4. So this is some of the problems we undergo ovarian carcinoma staging. So grossing is very important because you have to differentiate various stages as per the FIGO and the CNM staging. My references are this: the WHO, the Bloston's pathology, the Gynae pathology by Naki, and the Fletcher. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Wonderful lecture. Very extensive, must be very tiring. It was very well done, and especially the last part was very important. Staging of ovarian tumors are a very tricky thing, and we should know exactly how to stage and what to include and what not to include. AJCT's 8th edition has described that very well in detail. Very nicely presented, ma'am. Excellent presentation. If there are any questions, we'll take them right now.
Yeah, it is quite extensive, but the ovarian cancers, malignancy, the molecular features, because it will be like writing a complete answer as well as the slides, it is very important.
Correct, absolutely right. I don't see that there are any questions. Right. Thank you, ma'am, and see you on Monday with GTT and the rest. Thank you. Bye-bye. Take care. Bye. Good night.
Thank you.